Hello friends! There are many incredible free brushes that come with the Procreate app, and we're going to explore some of them. In this video, I'm going to test the Syrup brush. To find this brush, open up the brush library, head to the inking section, and then select Syrup. As always, I'm using the brush exactly as it was installed. I've made no changes in the Brush Studio. Also, my canvas is set to 3000 pixels square at 300 dpi, so just keep in mind that if your canvas is a different size, these brush strokes might look a little different. So let's go ahead and make a few test strokes from the smallest size to the largest size. So the brush can get pretty small and create a fine line, and it looks like, yeah, there's no texture, solid color here. And there's clearly a taper, so let's test that out. So you can see with light pressure, you get a really thin line, and with more pressure, you get a thicker line. But there's no change in color values. So the thin line is basically just as solid as the thicker line. I'm pretty sure this brush is fully opaque, but I'm just going to do a quick swatch test to confirm. And yes, it is very opaque. You can layer light color over dark or bright colors and nothing will show through. Now let's see how the smudge tool works. So I'm going to switch over, and I just noticed that by default, the smudge tool is set to 80% opacity. Now, I'm not sure why that is, so let's just see what happens. Okay, so it's not really creating much of a blend. It's just kind of pushing the color around. Let's try it in this direction, see if anything changes. Not really. Now I wonder if changing the opacity makes any difference. So I'm going to drop the opacity down. I've got it to about 41%. And maybe a little difference. Maybe it's a little smoother. Okay, never mind. I take that back. It still looks a bit streaky and doesn't create a very smooth blend at all. I'm not sure why the default opacity was set to 80%. Maybe there's another blending technique that I'm unaware of where this would make a difference or where this would work well. If any of you have any insight on that, feel free to let me know in the comments. Now let's see if pencil grip makes any difference. First, I'm using the side of the pencil with a loose grip versus a regular grip, and I'm already seeing it doesn't make a difference. Since the brush is so opaque, pencil grip doesn't change much. Okay, now for the drawing test. I typically prefer to sketch with a pencil brush, but I'm going to try using this brush at a small size to see how it works. And as I assumed it would, it does feel like sketching with ink, maybe with a fine liner pen at this size, which is fine. Personally, I still prefer a pencil brush because it feels softer and allows for a range in values, so I can add shading and generally make my sketches a bit more dynamic. But if you're someone who enjoys pen and ink sketching, this is probably a decent option. I'm just going to reduce the opacity on that sketch, and I'll be inking everything on separate layers. So I'm going to start by outlining the shapes, and then I will fill them with color. And since I don't have any texture I'm trying to preserve, I can use the color drop feature for a really quick fill. Okay, I'm finding that the stroke size changes almost a little too quickly. So it's really sensitive, and just a little pressure makes that stroke shift very quickly in size. So that can make it a little challenging to control. Yeah, see, it's happening there again. I'm not sure that I'm a big fan of that. The shifts in stroke size definitely make it a little challenging to make nice seamless line connections. So I'm having to clean up those areas with the eraser tool every time. I just need to clean up this little area here. There it goes again. Do you see what I mean about the pressure sensitivity almost going too far, too fast? So I think maybe I need to use just really light strokes here. Oh, okay, so there's a little jump in the stroke. Do you see that there? I'm not sure why that's happening. Maybe that has something to do with the pressure sensitivity as well. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit frustrating. It's like this brush kind of has a mind of its own, so it makes it a little difficult to control. Let's see if I can figure out how to add some shading and variations in color here. This brush is completely opaque, so it's not going to work in the same way that some of the more painterly brushes I've tested before worked. And the smudge tool did not look that promising when I tested it earlier, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to see if I can make it blend just a little bit, maybe. It's already looking pretty muddy though. Maybe some highlighted areas. Okay, I'm not liking the direction this is going in, and I think I'm starting to force it. All right, let's try that again. I spent way too long trying to make that work. Fortunately, I've been working on multiple layers, so that experiment didn't affect the base layers, and I can just pick right back up. So that's our reminder of the day. Always work in layers, people. Always work in layers. This time for the gills, I dropped the brush size all the way down just to make them a little bit more subtle. And now I have to figure out how to give the impression of shadow without blending the colors with the smudge tool, since that clearly did not work out so well. So I'm just adding a few darker lines towards the center where shadow would be. And I haven't had much practice at all with working with pen and ink, so there's probably a better technique that I'm just not familiar with. But so far, this seems to be working well. And actually, this is helping me get a little bit more comfortable with controlling the taper on this brush. I think maybe I just needed a lighter touch. You know, since the brush is so sensitive, I think maybe I was being a little heavy-handed before. I'm just adding a slightly darker color here to get a deeper shadow closest to the center. Now, I'm not quite sure how to approach this area. Maybe using large sections of solid color might work. Let's see. So I'm still going in with a light touch, but I'm applying a little bit more pressure to the ends of the strokes so that they flare out. And I'm using a similar technique here as well. Now I'm just going to add these little rings on the stem. And again, I'm doing this on a separate layer. I'm going to do the same thing here with filling these shapes, just using a light touch. And I'm finding it's allowing me to take advantage of that dramatic flare that happens when you press down even just a teeny tiny bit. Okay, so I'm feeling better about this brush now. It's doing what I want it to do. Or better yet, I'm allowing it to do what it wants to do. Adding a little more shadow here. I'm also noticing that it seems to work best when I keep my grip really, really loose. Now I have to admit that although I'm getting the hang of this brush, my brain really wants to blend these areas. So I'm just getting used to working in this different style. All right, now I'm going to add some shading to the mushroom cap. Now I noticed that with the default settings, the size of this brush doesn't go really, really large. I have the slider set all the way to the top here, and it would be nice if it could go even higher for quick coverage in large areas. So I've discovered that if I just press down on the brush slightly, it makes the color spread. So that's helping me with these shading and highlighted areas. So I still have that really light touch, but I'm just kind of pushing down and moving in small, almost circular motions. So I'm using that same technique for these little spots on the mushroom. So I've got my pencil angled slightly, I press down and the color spreads. So let me do it again. So do you see that? How it just spreads? That's actually pretty handy. I also noticed that if I adjust the pressure and angle of the brush, I can even get different shapes without changing the brush size. Now I can just go through and add a little shadow below each of these, and I'm doing this on a different layer, of course. And basically I repeated the same process for the small mushrooms, starting with some shadows in different shades of the red, a few highlights in the orange, and then adding the tiny little spots. Here I'm just adding some grass to literally ground these mushrooms. And the nice thing about using an inky brush like this is you can make loose, expressive marks without getting too precious about defining every detail, and it'll still look great. Okay, I'm pleased with how this looks, but I think it would look even nicer with a dark background. Ooh, and I'm going to add some stars as well. Well, just little dots, really. Again, I can just tap the screen with varying pressure to make these different sizes without having to even change the size of the brush. All right, I think it's done. Okay, y'all, in a lot of ways, I didn't test this brush. This brush tested me. I really had to let go of the way I usually do things, and once I let the brush do its thing, everything came together much more smoothly. Some of the features I did not like at first, like the almost extreme pressure sensitivity, actually turned out to be a benefit once I figured out how to use them. I'd probably make a few adjustments in the Brush Studio to tweak a couple of things, just a little, but the default settings might be perfect for someone else. I'd say there's a bit of a learning curve with this brush, especially if you're not used to working with ink brushes, but it's definitely worth a try. I'd love to hear some advice or feedback from someone who uses this brush regularly. If that's you, please leave a comment and let us know your tips and tricks. If you've never used this brush, what do you think? Would you be willing to give it a try? Let me know in the comments. If you'd like to see more from this brush review series, there's a link to the playlist in the description. And if you've enjoyed this video, I'd love if you'd give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.